Welcome to Burn the Ship. This is the podcast where we connect entrepreneurs with professionals that can help you go all in on your business. We talk to people who've walked the walk, talk the talk, and through all the things that we experience in the small business world, and have come on our podcast to share some of those skills and experiences with us. So thank you very much, first of all. It's very kind of you to spend some of your time with me and some of the time with the audience. Bringing value to those people and value to myself is very, very generous of you. So thank you very much. In addition to that, I think that what you do is very interesting, and we'll give the listeners some context to that here in a second. But I really enjoy these conversations with people that have built skills in understanding business processes and perfecting those things, and really putting scale and growth in the hands of entrepreneurs. I think that as entrepreneurs, one of the hardest things to do is cross that bridge of, how big do I grow? How do I get there? How big do I want to be? How can I do those things effectively? And how can I still be myself when I get to the scale that I want to operate at? I still want that customer experience to stay whole, all of those things. So, with that in mind, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do?
Yeah, Bailey, thank you so much for having me here today. My name's Nikki Lindgren. I am the founder and managing partner at a boutique marketing growth partner, really is how we're positioning ourselves these days. I have a team of 11 employees who run the agency with me and do the day-to-day operations for our clients. And our clients are brands in the beauty and lifestyle space that have e-commerce businesses that they're trying to find and acquire new customers to continue scaling and growing their own business. So we're running paid media, SEO, and TikTok affiliates primarily as our core services for brands. And we've been doing this since 2020. It hasn't been that long, but at the same time, in digital years, it's a ton of years. So much has changed since in the way we operate, in the things that matter within each of our disciplines in that duration of time.
Sure. So tell me, with that in mind, tell me a little story. How did you get into doing what you're doing now? I'm assuming that you have some marketing experience previously, and we know that a lot of things changed in 2020. Really, the vehicles that were driving these consumer products to consumers really renegotiated themselves during the whole COVID era. So, tell me a story. Where did this skill set come from, and how did you decide to implement it in this space specifically?
Yeah, well, I think going like way back, my dad had his own business growing up. So being able to watch him kind of like, craft his own work lifestyle and what he specialized in was a really cool thing to observe. But then myself professionally, I was here in the San Francisco Bay Area where I still live, and ended up finding my first role at Pottery Barn, part of Williams
Oh,
Sonoma.
nice.
So a really big corporation. And I was actually in the part of the business that I wasn't excited about, which is so sad to say now because it was product development. So we were deciding which products would be on the floors at Pottery Barn stores. And for some reason, I was like, it's just not data centric enough. It's not like pushing the needle. I want to be in marketing. So I eventually found my way to another big retailer based here called World Market. And they, at the time I joined, did not have DTC. So I was on their
Oh, wow.
founding DTC team, a little junior employee back then, but basically there were 7 of us and we got to run the whole store and set up all the marketing channels. So it was a good like boots on the ground, just getting all the experience, finding all the agency partners to work with and stuff. So that's where I really cut my teeth and learned everything I know. From there, I moved into the agency side where I led and grew SEO for an agency, starting with about 12 clients, going all the way to 45, and building a team under me. Went in-house, agency side kind of continued moving around, but I think the thread that I was finding now that I was in my sweet spot, which was digital marketing, that's where I wanted to be graduating college. What I found was being in-house and needing to hire an external vendor because I didn't have time to do the actual doing anymore, showed me some pain points between the relationship. My brands were never big enough to be kind of the darling for the agency. And I felt like that came through quite a bit. Our account team at the agency never really seemed to understand the business as well as I wanted them to. And then flip to my agency experience, like I understood that firsthand because I was in that situation as the agency side person too. So all that kind of encompassed why I wanted to start Pennock, our digital marketing agency, to really kind of help bridge the gap and act as an extension of the internal teams. Now, I understand that that's a pretty played out pitch, right? That's what I think a lot of digital agencies are doing. So I think it's really hard to differentiate yourself. And like I was just talking to someone at a high end jewelry brand today, and he's like, "Well, tell me your playbook. Like, what are you going to do differently than the guys who are currently running our ads?" And I'm like, "Well, honestly, like, paid media, if we're talking about that discipline in itself, like it is what it is. I think the difference is what our clients say is like we're better at strategy, we're better at creative ideation and creative strategy, really. And, we're fingers on the pulse. So anytime we see something that's working or not working, we scale or, pause down. And I know technology can do so much of that for us now too, but I think that human touch and that strategy is really what will continue to differentiate us. So that's a little bit of the story of how we came to be, why we're doing it, and how we've kind of like narrowed down our discipline and our niche to be very intentional, so that we're continuing to grow our expertise in the client's line of business, not just the disciplines of marketing we specialize in.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that from the client perspective as well, what they see, I think, is very similar between agencies, right? Like the 90% that they see from like graphic and video creation to getting eyeballs on your content, I think a lot of that process is very similar. And what they don't see a lot of, but what makes the biggest difference is like actually turning that engagement into dollars, like it actually turning an impact on your business. Because the worst, like one of the worst like tastes in your mouth that you can have as a business owner is like you feel like your marketing is working, like there's engagement, there are things that you can see people are talking about you, but you don't really know the impact that it's having on your business. And that's why I love talking to people that have niched down to a specific discipline, is that you have to really understand that buyer's journey. It's much less about understanding Google or paid ads or SEO. It's so much more about understanding the way that your consumer goes about purchasing and consuming your product. And that takes a lot of hours in those specific disciplines. So tell me, if in your words, what is kind of the superpower that you guys have? What is the thing that you guys do best that maybe differentiates you from the rest of the industry? But in addition, like, what is that thing that just makes you guys so effective? I know that there's a pretty clear cap on clients for most marketing agencies, and they say, oh, we can handle 5 people, we can handle 10 people, we can handle 20 people, whatever that is. And depending on how much of that process that you implemented yesterday can be implemented today, I know that kind of changes the scale, but I feel like there are a lot of intricacies within that industry that not a lot of people talk about. When your clients grow and when your client base grows, you have to kind of grow in congruency to those people. So talk to me a little bit about that. What's kind of been the shining star through this whole process for you guys?
Yeah, so I think, probably pretty obvious, but one of the benefits of niching down, so let's just talk about like the beauty industry. A handful of our clients right now are squarely in skincare, whether it be for Gen Alpha or, mature boomer audience. It's generally kind of like skincare, health of your skin before you apply your makeup and all that fun stuff. So in that lane, we obviously have different buyer personas brand by brand, but there are some through lines in terms of what types of angles and concepts of ads are going to work. So it does simplify some of the research stages that we have to do brand by brand. And we can say like, this brand is sort of like another brand that we have in our portfolio. The other brand's suffering, it doesn't use XYZ type of creative. We'll get that forward as like the next strategy. So I think there's just some big unlocks when you start to niche the types of brands you're working with. When we first started, we had brands that were like telehealth for autistic kids. We had brands that were subscription box clothing brands. And then we had beauty brands as well. And like they probably don't sound all that different, but kind of going back, and this is before, we had the big AI movement we've had. So like going back and building all of these strategies for e-commerce was the through line, or some sort of like, subscribe to this thing, but the playbooks were quite different different. So I think that's like the value add. And it was so hard for me to understand in my first couple of years, because I was like, I'm trying to grow an agency. I want it to be a certain size for me to feel fulfilled. So I will take whatever client comes my way that is e-com, because I want to grow the business. And, I kind of threw out any piece of advice to be niche down, because my target was revenues and growth. And that came back to bite me in the butt with shorter relationships and contracts cut early, because we were not showing up as well in some of the industry verticals that our clients were in.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't want clients 3 months at a time. That's
No,
really
not
what
at all.
I've found is kind of the writing on the wall for a lot of digital agencies. Like, if your sales process is very good and your top of your funnel is very, very full, but you see a lot of churn, it's either like the process that your client is going through of using your stuff is too taxing, or you're making it super complicated, or maybe you don't understand the industry quite the way that you thought to. Maybe you should be marketing to someone different, a different platform, different thing. All of those tiny changes come with a ton on the back end that people don't see. It's understanding
Exactly.
those platforms, and what they love and what they don't like, and who you want to get those things in front of, and new product offerings and new content needs to be created. Like, there are a lot of, even if two businesses are 95% the same, that 5% that is different can lead to a tremendous amount of work from a marketing agency standpoint. What would you say have been some of the obstacles? Like, what's been difficult for you guys going through this, what I guess it's been 6-ish years of
Yeah.
growing your agency to the size that it is now?
Yeah, I would say the first big one is, I had managed teams before, but obviously I hadn't run a business before. I had a blog back in the early 2000s that I was able to sell. It was like my side project,
Oh,
and,
nice.
built some writers to come along that journey with me. But, they were all freelance and they were contributing like a couple hours a week. It wasn't the scale of running your own business with full-time employees and benefits and all that fun stuff. So I think the first thing that I unfortunately just misread was everyone should share the knowledge that I have. So my level of depth and expertise, having grown up the ladder for, over a decade at that point, was shared knowledge that my team somehow would just have. So I would become really frustrated if things were, not done as quickly as I wanted them to be, or they weren't following kind of like my templates or playbooks. So that kind of led to some obviously issues with our culture and the employee morale at the time. And also the bigger underlining issue, which is we need better standard operating procedures. We need, a system that's going to allow us to operate the way me at the time, like Nikki, needed us to show up. So
Right.
we really built strong operating procedures, though, again, with all the changes in the industry and stuff, like we're evolving them. We're making a major shift in our SOP automations and like how frequently certain activities should be done to manage client success. Like right now, we're going to kick it off next week with our team. So it's not to say that once it's there, it's locked. We have to kind of be agile enough to understand the tea leaves and what's going on within the industry and within our clients' needs.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a never ending process. I think that the amount of time that you have to dedicate to that is what people don't, is the
Right.
part that they don't see, right?
Well, and I
Like,
think like I've got two senior team members now who they've grown up at this agency. And so they're kind of responsible for parts of this, but oftentimes like if they're underwater with some client stuff going on in real time, I'll step in and help. And I think sometimes I maybe let it sit with them for long enough, hoping that they'll have the free time here in the next week or two. And then after 3 weeks, I'm like, I guess I'll do it. But those are kind of my favorite moments, is when I get to actually step in and be like, what are we doing here and what value does it have to the clients? So that was my fun like late night recently, where I was like, this is just too good to even like tend to my kids right now. I've got to figure out what's going on with this part of the business.
yeah, absolutely. It's like a language, right? Like the intricacies of both your relationship with your client and the processes that you implement in your own business. It's like if you see it from the outside looking in, you can make out most of it, or it may seem familiar to you or just adjacent to what you already understand. But there's so much specific things that if you don't really live in it, you don't really understand that ecosystem, and it's impossible to replicate it without a dense understanding of those things, which can also be hindering to the people in that organization, right? Like if you're reluctant to kind of learn that language
Right.
and kind of comply and adhere to what those processes look like in the organization that you're working for or with, you can experience some turbulence. But I think that what interests me so much about the industries that you guys serve is the speed. There
Hmm.
there there are changes. There are changes in products. There are an understanding of trends has a real dollar amount value
Yeah.
for you guys. Like the understanding and the on top of it and the finger that you have to have on the pulse of those industries is very, very interesting. So I would imagine that a lot of your time, as you continue to grow, is a lot of that. But where do you go from here? What are your goals, and how can we, as a community at Burn the Ship, help?
Yeah. Well, we are, expecting to have growth. Like, obviously, we're not just here to sustain how we're operating today, but we're really thoughtful about who we're bringing in as a client and a team member, when and why, right? So right now our team really maxes out at about 25 to 30 clients depending on the client size. So we do have times where we can be waitlist for a brand to come work with us. We have other times where, clients leave unexpectedly, and now we feel like we're scrambling to get that last position filled in terms of client load. So I do think, for me, the next step is, because we've been mainly referral and word of mouth to get to the size we are, is, building our own marketing agent engine as an agency to make sure we're out there a little bit more and not just relying so heavily on word of mouth and referrals. But where do we expect this to go? I mean, I've already been doing it for 7 years. The team is pretty established in what we're doing. So I do think, that 30% growth year over year, ideally in profit revenue, not
Sure.
or profit, not top line, is where we want to focus our efforts. And we've been approached by people for acquisition. I think for me, it's like when I step back and figure out what I'm doing next, it likely is a version of what I'm already doing, which kind of defeats the purpose of an M&A. So, we're going to kind of keep this thing going and look for bigger and better clients, to continue working with.
Well, I'm excited for you. I hope to build some relationship with some brands that I think would be a good fit for you guys. Like I said, trying to build out this value proposition of people in and around the e-commerce world is very important to me in my business. So I hope to be able to send you some introductions that are maybe fruitful for your business. And as your marketing engine kicks off and picks up ahead of steam, I think that myself and my audience would love to support you guys in whatever content it is that you put out there, and tell us what to look for, and hopefully we can help. But for you guys listening, I hope that the thing that you take away from this is that there's a couple of things. I mean, you can dive into this podcast and pick out a lot of different things, but I think that that's something that is glaring to me about these industries that I've kind of begun to play around in, is that there's a lot that you don't see behind the curtain. There are a lot of logistics and marketing and operations and people that are driving the growth of these businesses. And either if you are a business service serving these people, or you are one of those industries yourself, reflect on that. Reflect on the value that you bring to those processes and to those people and to their customers, and you will find much success. I know that there is a lot of uphill battling with understanding platforms and the vehicles that you get you to be successful on those platforms, and the people that you're going to have to talk to put a lot of these things in place. But no one is listening to this podcast because they are afraid of doing hard work. I believe that in my heart. So, Nikki, thank you again for joining me. Your conversation and your candor and your flexibility with me is very, very kind. And I look forward to supporting you guys in the future. And for you guys listening, please burn the ship. I think that you would be surprised about what you're capable of if you really took a chance on your business.
Love it.